Thank you, Jan, for the introductions. Very warm welcome to all of you. We are super happy to be part of the Software Center since a longer period of time. That really helped us to gain speed and the right way of working in software development. And our teams in that area have been super fast. Now the rest of the company has to follow. And that's a bit the challenge we are in, and I want to dig a bit deeper into that. A lot of the topics I will show later you will find in the sessions afterwards with some ideas of solutions I have seen. They will fully pay in the journey we are doing and what we have figured out. So where are we coming from? We are a traditional truck supplier. We have a huge customer base, and our customers have a huge number of different problems to solve. So we really need tailor-made solutions to support our customer with the right product. That ends up that we have a big complexity, and we need to manage that complexity, and we need to create a certain flexibility to be able to support our customer in all regions, in all applications with the right product. And this capability to provide it's a unique selling point, and it's enabling us to sell the products which we want to sell in the different applications. And that's a challenge for software development, but it's also a challenge for all traditional areas from production, from traditional R&D on the mechanical side, but also, like Jan mentioned, how to sell it, how to sell complexity. In addition to that complexity, we are on the journey to have a sustainable transportation, and we are fully buying into the 100% fossil-free transportation. That means we have several technologies in parallel. Combustion engines are a major element of our transport solutions today, and we need to make them better every week and every day. There are several solutions to make them more efficient. Battery electric vehicles gain importance. We have a tremendous growth in that area also for heavy transportation. So it's a new technology we have to have with that big portfolio I've shown before into the market as well in parallel. And for some applications, fuel cell will play a role. It's the next level of complexity. So we have to manage that in our whole industrial system, also in the software development, creating even more complexity than what we have today. And then it's not only our vehicle. We see major benefits to contribute to sustainable transport solutions in system optimization. We are doing this since decades on a component and a subsystem level to create more efficiency in driveline, and software is a major contributor to that with software controls of components and behaviors. We are now going more and more into system vehicle level optimization to optimize everything together, and there again software is a very important piece. But that's not enough. Our vehicle is just a part of the surrounding. So we need to understand the surrounding, we need to communicate with the surrounding. We get a higher complexity in that area where software is contributing as well. And then a big part of efficiency we can generate when we optimize the transport flow. And that it's a combination of onboard and offboard systems. It will be super important when we have electric vehicles where we do not provide the flexibility and the range we have today with combustion engine driven trucks. So next level of interaction between software developers, engineers, with the surrounding, also with business people. In that area, we are facing some key challenges related to software and electronics. We have done a lot of work in system optimization. That also ended up in that we have increased complexity in our software in our electronic architecture. So that's something we need to optimize, to change, to deal with the next steps we have. Then we see today a high dependency between hardware and software. We are doing steps to disconnect that as good as possible, but it's also clear that we will keep a certain dependency between both areas. With the new variants, with system optimizations, we are in an area where we have a big testing effort to test that all variants are running well, that all complexity is covered with our testing. And therefore, we need to enable us also to use digital tools to be able to test, to simulate variants we even have not produced up to now, and to simulate the behavior of our software in the complete system. And then another challenge where I will focus more in the next slide is how do we align the different speeds we have in very short software development cycles with the rest of a truck development. And there I see some major key challenges in a vehicle development and industrialization, but we also have measures to address it. What is clear in that surrounding is not every element of our development and industrialization will be driven in an agile process, will be driven with fast cycles. And for some areas, it makes more sense to work in a waterfall instead of an agile system. It is also clear that not all our partners we have in the ecosystem will be able to work agile or will be able to work in our cadence. We have to respect that. As we deliver a safety-relevant hardware product, we also have to secure that we have fixed milestones. I cannot move them even when I'm working agile. I cannot down prioritize them in my software development process. We need to keep them, and we need to respect this. And when you are building trucks, when you're industrializing truck components, there are certain elements which have a long lead time. We need to fix early in the development process to be able to build, to industrialize, to test. We have to respect this as well. So very important to make this happen is that we really talk with the different functions with each other, and we align the cadence that our short loops fit in the longer cycles of our company. If we have a disconnect here, if we do not fill into the same milestones, we will lose time. We will lose even more time than what we have gained. So this synchronization is very important. Then it's all about open and transparent communication and exchanging informations. If the other one does not know the pain points of the one who has a long lead time or the one who has a challenge with short loops, we cannot adapt. And it's all about how to maneuver a bit in the gray zone to make things happen at the right point of time. In that complexity we have, it's super important that we use digitalization to come to more data-driven decisions. Whatever we can do to support everyone in the whole chain to decide by data will help us to minimize discussions and unnecessary loops. And therefore we need also more and more virtual development. And like Jan mentioned, it is super important also to integrate our business people, our sales colleagues. So we have to give them a chance in an easy way to use our virtual development tools to sell advantages to our customers. And then we need to have from the beginning a clear understanding what are non-negotiables, what are fixed milestones like a homologation, like a tooling we have to meet also in agile work. And the last point I see is We sometimes intend to use our experience in the system as a constraint to say something will not work because we have had this experience in the past. If we turn it around and say, use that experience, the big know-how of our teams, what can go wrong, as an input to make a real risk mitigation, to use the fast speed we have built up, instead of a constraint to limit us in making changes, then we have made a big step to work together. We have a lot of discussions that we need new architectures on the hardware and the software side. But for me, they are only an enabler. It's much more important that we come in the, from Jan described, continuous product evolution step. We want to make our products better every day, even the ones out in the field. It's a great chance, but it means also that we need to change our way of working, not only in engineering, also in the other areas. We need to keep in mind, even as a software-driven company, that we are developing software to fulfill a customer value. So we need to be customer-centric. We need to understand the problem of our customer to solve it, and we need to have it in our DNA. Then we need to use digitalization to get the data, to understand the customer problem and translate it into the solution we have to provide. And that's also a big chance for mechanical engineering, for sales to get access to that data, to make the right steps during the development. And we have to have that mindset of a continuous delivery of value, to have a strong baseline, to not do things again and again in every serial development, to build on something, and also to build on what we have out in the market to make it better. And this only will work with the high complexity we have when we have end-to-end agile software-driven development, and that understanding that we need the fast loops, the fast feedback to optimize our system and to make our products better. Even if we run into problems, it helps to fix them. So the mindset, and to translate that mindset in the whole company, it's even more important than to have the right architecture in place on the hardware and the software side. So that's our journey we are on, and for me very important is to keep our product in mind by everything what we are doing and to keep the passion for what we are doing. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for a great presentation. I hope my audio is live. Yeah, we are. So if we take a seat, Mark, then they will adjust the camera so that we are both in the picture. And now someone has to admit Michael Cato, because that would of course be terrible if he wouldn't be able to. He works at Scania as Chief Digital Officer, so I mean, one of your best friends in the industry, right? So wonderful presentation, and I think it really hits several of the challenges that I think many of us are looking at. I don't know which room is... I hear Helena and some others. Whoever is in that room is not muted, so I would really appreciate if you would mute, unless you're asking a question. And suddenly it helped. That helps. So we're going to invite people to ask questions. You can do that either by going into the chat of Teams, or by asking or just unmuting and raising your hand and basically asking a question. That's perfectly all right. And while we're going to get set up, and feel free to mention to me if there are questions in the chat, I wanted to, one of the topics that I was talking about, I mean, we talked about continuous value delivery. You brought the same up in your presentation, which I thought was really interesting. Traditionally, we talked a lot about mechanics and electronics as static, and the software can evolve over time. To what extent are we starting to think about it? We can perhaps treat, for instance, electronics in a vehicle in the same way. Periodic updates of electronics. Is that something that Volvo is thinking about at all?
Yeah, yes, we can do that. I would say if we find the right customer value, that is, I would sacrificing it, and there might be even options to modify hardware to reach a continuous growth of functionality.
Because one of the challenges that we've seen is that whenever you continue to push new functionality to a vehicle, you have a choice. Either you put so much headroom in the electronics that it basically becomes bleeding edge expensive, right? Which then makes the initial cost of the vehicle very, very high. Or you find ways to, at different points in time, replace the electronics in the vehicle in order to give a more continuous growth of the headroom as you need it. Is that something that you are thinking about within Volvo, or how should I think about that?
I think we have realized that as well.
Right.
And the question is, that then will not be a full continuous process. So when do you have the right steps in time where you could, I would say, touch the vehicle, and we do things in our fleet which we have for second-hand sales, where we really take the vehicles back, make some updates, modify them to the customer demand in that areas, and we are thinking how we can use new software architectures to bring that also further.
Right. So very exciting, very exciting. So I'm going to check, are there any questions in the chat so far? Anyone, if anyone wants to ask a question, just unmute. Could you read out or is there a way in which I can get the questions on the screen here by any chance? But now I'm looking at Matthias.
Actually, we got a couple of questions here.
Okay, yeah, nice. If we can open the chat, yeah, that would be awesome. So there is Roger Westman from Toyota Material Handling, by the way. So if I understood you correctly, you said data is key to bridge the waterfall versus agile working methods. Could you elaborate a bit?
It's two elements. Data is one element. The other element for me is a common understanding.
Right.
If I have a team that needs to work in a waterfall or a partner that is not in an agile flow, I really need to understand what elements or what time slots, what deliveries do I need to deliver on my side to be able to support his flow in the waterfall, and how do I align my agile process. And then it's a lot about transparency.
Right.
Agility is not only more flexible, it's normally more transparent. So if we are able to provide the other ones with the information where we are on our agile track and where we see deviations, they can start to react early. So this exchange of data, of the progress, helps to bring that together. And then we need to create a common understanding how to decide.
Right.
And data help also to come from a well-experienced stomach-making decision to more, I would say, scientific, data-based decision where we limit some of the discussions, and that will help also to bring together different kinds of working.
Yeah, I think that you raised a very important topic there, because in virtually all of the software center companies, I run into people on a very regular basis that basically claim something along the lines of, I've been with the company for 25 years, I know our customer, I know our product, and I have decided we're going to do this. So a pure gut-based, opinion-based decision. But you mentioned the importance of using data as a form of decision-making, which, at least in my view, in an industry that is in very rapid transition, experience almost becomes a disadvantage if you're not careful, because you're relying on experiences from a world that is no longer present. Does that resonate with you, or how do you think about experience versus data?
If experience starts to constrain, yes. But when we are also in a rapid change, we need to speed up, and we might not be able to dig in all areas we would need to dig in based on data. So experience can really help to filter out the areas where we should look in with data more detailed.
Right.
So we should use that great experience as an help instead of as a constraint.
And deciding where to use data and where to use experience is an opinion-based decision? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I would say identify the areas based on experience where we need to dig in more with data.
Yes. I couldn't resist. So thanks a lot. Jens Svensson, I'm not sure if you know the name.
No.
You don't? He's in your organization. So if you scroll up a little bit, because the question just... question to Mark. In an agile setup, it is not so easy to cover both short-term customer value delivery, but at the same time preparing for the future and doing automotive engineering, I suppose, and research. How can we, Volvo, be better to prioritize both? So this is basically one of your people putting you on the spot, I think.
That's perfect, and I think that's always tricky when you are working with backlogs and prioritization, how to set the right prioritization, but we have good examples that this is possible. And it's also a bit about to setting up the mindset. We need advanced engineering, we need research to be able to make the next steps and to reserve the budget and also the resources to do it. And then for me, and for example, Software Center is a good opportunity. We need to interact also in that areas more with the external world and use partners, because some areas have been faster. How to connect, how to link them to our people, and how to utilize that to drive us forward.
Good. Thank you. If you could scroll down a little bit, there were a few questions. Roger said, thank you, Jens Schut. Good presentation, Mark. Does Volvo sell their software solutions, or is it mostly for improving your trucks, service tools, etc.? And if you sell, how do you work with your value proposition?
I would say we are on the way to make a model to be able to sell them. And as I was on the supplier before, I was used to sell software, but it's tough for sales guys to sell them. And to make that able, it's what you have described as well. How are we able to describe the customer benefit? A salesperson can price, can sell in that fast cycles. How to keep them updated is a discussion we have in the interface between the R&D and the sales organization.
Because so you are moving in that direction, because I understood that Volvo has publicly stated that they want to get to a 50-50 revenue between vehicle sales and service sales, right?
And there we are looking also in complete transport solutions as providing, I would say, a bigger package, but also into supporting infrastructure on electric vehicles. It's going more and more in that direction.
No, I can definitely see that. So and then Pontus Vetrell talks about, with Tesla talking about 27 hardware updates per week in production, should we settle for hardware is waterfall? And I think you know the story, that at least how it was described to me in a Wired article was that they have one floor at which the actual production takes place. They have another floor where they are constantly innovating on the vehicle model, and whenever they find something that really works, they just pop it up one floor and it basically enters production. This is not how traditional automotive companies have worked in my experience, but I'd love to hear your take on that. I mean, is this something that you are thinking about?
I would say we try to find the right balance, because some of our processes, some of our constraints on the supply base, I would say, are there because they make sense. On the other hand, a crisis always has an advantage. So the silicon crisis has trained us to get much more flexible. And this has helped us also to introduce things also on the hardware side faster with data-based decision making also. So there we have made improvements, and we are now looking how we can bring that into our flow to make a combination. I'm pretty sure we will not be as bold and as fast than the Tesla colleagues, but we will find a good way in the middle.
Well, they are trying to build trucks, and it proved to be, I think, a little bit more challenging than what they expected. Maybe, I don't know. So Marie Welmer, which I'm guessing is a Siemens person if I read the long number of letters behind her name. Mark, what is your view on data ownership? Is the data in that your vehicles are producing owned by the car owner, so the customer, or do you consider it to be owned by Volvo? Do there need to be special agreements in order to utilize the data in the digitalization context? How is Volvo looking into the data question?
There are clear legal constraints we have to follow, and we have to follow in the process with our customers, and we respect to get access to data from the vehicle. I think there are procedures in place. They belong, depending on the content, to both sides. And on the other hand, we have a big chance also with our own fleet, with our simulation tools to enrich our databases. So it's definitely a combination, and it needs a discussion with your customer. If you can provide him an advantage by using the data, he normally buys in.
Yeah, because that is, I mean, I worked for Intuit in Silicon Valley for several years, and while I was there, we moved from selling CDs to selling software as a service. We just rewrote 59 end-user license agreements that everyone had to click in order to accept to use our product, and poof, the data was ours. So that was how we did it, but maybe that's not the process that you want to follow, maybe.
I think it's getting a bit more tricky with the growing requirements from the legal side. But I think we have found a good way, compliant want to do it.
I mean, what most people don't realize, I think, if you buy a car, not a truck, but a car, if you buy a new car, you sign a legal contract with your with the dealer that is actually quite long and actually deals with all the data questions. So since the 90s, my understanding is that all car OEMs basically had ways of getting all the data back from the vehicles, because when you bought the car, you actually signed up for that.
And we have our ways as well, and we are using our
You're
fleet.
using those, so not everyone wants to talk about that, but it's of course present. Niels-Jørgen Strøm is from Grundfos, one of the colleagues of Mette, who will be in this room at 11 to talk about how they work with artificial intelligence. And Grundfos had a presentation, a really God presentation. I like that. Sorry, it was a small typo, Niels-Jørgen, I couldn't resist. I think he meant a really good presentation. When over time updating the hardware in the installed fleet, have you thought about how to manage the potential explosion in the configuration management state space that so software updates would need to support many different hardware configurations? Is that something that is coming up with in Volvo?
I think yes, we have a pretty good system behind to manage today, and also upcoming hardware variants. We are well prepared from our back-end system to support this, because managing this complexity was always a unique selling point for our group. So we have the tools and the systems in place to cope with it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the silicon crisis has caused you to probably increase the number of hardware configurations simply because of accessibility during the recent period, I suppose.
Yes, and now we have an advantage that today our electronic-based hardware components also are communicating backwards and forwards with the vehicle system, so that we are able to identify variants we have in the vehicle and connect them.
Good. So Thomas Isaac asked short loop agile and long loop non-agile, the synchronization of both, your views on how to address this. I mean, this is your chance to repeat your talk one more time.
I think what is really important is a clear understanding on what are the non-negotiables. It has to be discussed early enough. For me, homologation is a typical topic, and homologation is different country by country, and you have different lead times. So all agile developers and software developers need to know that there is a certain content they have to deliver at that point of time, and they have to respect it. And that's what we are doing. So it's an open discussion. But also to go in, on the other hand, into the discussion with the more in the long lead time area working teams. What is your degree of flexibility? What is your gray zone? Because if we are now in weekly builds on the software side or even faster, I would say I'm in the tolerance if I know it from a fixed deadline. So if we have that understanding, we can tune it together, but it's a lot about communication and sharing.
And people don't like to talk to each other at Volvo.
No, they like to talk to each other.
I'm joking. No, because I think that is one of the key things. I mean, traditional complex embedded systems development was mechanics took their time, and if they ran over, it meant that electronics would have a little bit less time, and if they ran over, it meant that software had hardly any time, because they would often start after mechanics and electronics were done, which is exactly, I think, the kind of challenge that we're trying to get away from, right?
Yes, and I think also the new tools, digitalization, helps us to start the software development earlier. We do not need to have all hardware in place, but we need to have a common understanding. How are we synchronizing flows? What can we do in addition? When someone has a delay, have an open discussion. What do I need to deliver in a minimum that the other one is still able to go forward?
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned homologation, and we're talking about continuous deployment of new software to vehicles in the field. How do those two combine in your view?
I think we have.
I want my truck to get better every day I use it, right?
We have to separate. There are some areas which are not homologation relevant. There we have a higher flexibility. We have areas where we have to respect the homologation. There we will have several time slots where we homologate and then we can introduce. When we do it right, we can use that homologation also to introduce updates which we have had in the past to make old vehicles better.
Right.
But there we need also to create that flow, and it's like you have described, in some areas we will really have a continuous flow.
Yeah.
And in other areas it will be a stepwise process.
Because I work a little bit with some of the companies that build autonomous drive or ADAS solutions. I think that the common understanding in the industry is that we will not be able to get to real high quality autonomous drive unless we have continuous deployment of new updates. But on the other hand, AD is pretty safety critical where I come from, or very advanced, and we don't talk about level 4 anymore, but very advanced highway AD, for instance. So how do you think about those two things? Because then I would want homologation as part of the DevOps process almost.
Yes, or I need to establish an architecture which allows me to have, might be a more conservative safety backbone,
right,
and more flexible agile performance backbone, which will bring, I would say, continuous performance improvement without sacrificing my safety backbone. So there are different
so that's
opportunities.
So you basically have a fallback safe solution that was triggered whenever you feel the system considers itself to go outside of bounds, basically.
And then I think it's on discussion in several areas how to homologate together with the legal authorities such systems, and the discussion will be needed how to also make it somehow flexible.
So the two, since there are no questions at this point, so for everyone in the audience, feel free to keep pushing and send questions. But I was a little interested, or I'm very interested actually. Yes, go ahead.
Should I have a question?
Go ahead.
John Lanza from Volvo Cars.
Oh, Jan, go ahead.
Because what I hear you say is actually that you see the truck or the vehicle as a number of layers, where you have a safe layer at the bottom, which is always a sort of a safe drivable thingy, and then you can do more advanced thing above that. And do you also see this as hardware separated layers, or you know, what are the important details there?
I think there are a lot of important details behind, and depending on the level which you will reach, you also might have a more safe hardware layer in addition to a performance hardware layer. I think that's the beauty of redundancy, that you have even more complexity you can play with.
Yeah, because I ask this because I see that there was a trend of centralization of computation in this in the automotive industry for a while now. And I also see a trend of separating computation in layers, hardware-wise, so that you have, let's say, the AD separated from the infotainment, separated from maybe the basic control system, hardware-wise. Yeah, and also perhaps the buses.
Yeah, and Mark mentioned redundancy in the hardware, which you need for AD, from my understanding, which could be a way of separating things, I suppose, right? Or would you like to comment on Jan's?
Yeah, yes, I think it's where we will, I think, see different measures depending on the level of automation and safety we want to reach, and I think we will use what we have available in the vehicle to play also with the different layers, also on different hardwares with different performance steps.
Good. So I wanted to wrap this up in about 3 minutes, so that we have 5 minutes to get the next session set up. In all the companies that I work with in the embedded system space, almost always the topic comes up that says we have two major challenges: digitalization and sustainability. Which I find surprising, but that is how the discussion goes. And you talked about ICE engines or internal combustion engines until 2040. But I thought you were more aggressive than that. So what is the plans? How do you think about electrification, other kinds of technologies versus traditional ICE?
So what we say is normally our fleet stays 10 years in operation. So when we really want to have a CO2 neutral fleet in 2040, we need to sell only CO2 neutral products in 2030.
Right.
So we always take the rolling fleet in perspective. Then we will have different technologies supporting that journey. And the combustion engine can also play a role in a CO2 neutral system, but depending on the fuel and where the fuel is coming from.
Right.
And we see some tough applications where we might find a solution until 2030 with battery fuel cell technologies, or might not find a solution. Like 65-ton in hot climate operation will be challenging for other technologies where we might need, in a lower volume, still combustion engines operated with sun fuels, H2, or other opportunities.
Yeah, very good. Good. Mark, I think we're out of questions. Are there any final words that you would like to share with the audience? I mean, you've now observed Software Center for a while. You know the company. So if you would have to share what you think is your most important takeaway over the last year that you've been at Volvo now.
I think a super important takeaway, use that possibility that meetings, at conferences, to talk to each other, bring the awareness of we need to be fast. We need to be able to integrate that fast systems, the fast feedback into our traditional ways of operating. And it helps if we do it together and if we build it up together between companies, even if we have as competitors a certain common understanding. It helps reach us in the industry to get the level we need to be.
Excellent. Good. Mark, I wanted to thank you once again very much for coming out and doing the keynote. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you in the future as well.
A pleasure.
And with that, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.